the Malice in the Palace was like, it's an NBA documentary, and I got into the NBA because of Bal, and I'm still massively into it because of it as well. So, Bal, I know you want to say something, on.
Yeah, I'll take credit for all that, but not Bongara. Just not Bongara. Yeah. That was your own Elda. You went to university, you got involved in the wrong crowd, you started dancing with sweaty men. That was your own thing.
And women. But okay.
Majority, Indy?
It fluctuates, then it depends. Anyway.
Skipping on from there. Okay.
So, alright, Malice at the Palace. So,
right.
Context is, it's a documentary on Netflix. It's based on a massive brawl that happened in the NBA in 2004. The brawl happened between the Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Now, this may sound like a really random thing. You're thinking, why is this important? Because it shaped a lot of the NBA culture going forward in the years afterwards. And the whole issue behind it was no one ever found out what actually happened. You never heard the players' point of view. So the purpose of this documentary was to tell you the view from the players and to give you an insight into everyone in there. So I'm talking like people who were working in the venue, people who were super fans, the police officers, the prosecutors that got involved, the players, the coaches. You could see it took a long time to produce. But yeah, anyway, so we're going to just dissect it a little bit. So Bal, give me your initial thoughts and I'll give you mine.
I mean, look, let's get one thing clear. NBA players getting into fights is not a rare thing.
No, it's
right?
not.
It happens all the time. The story you told me, or story I heard ages ago, was there used to be fines because in the NBA, obviously, you've got the court is just right there. The fans are like next to it. There is no barricade or separation divide at all. And even the players' bench is virtually on the first line of the crowd.
Yeah.
Right? So there used to be fights where players would get up and rush the bench. I think it was Steve Kerr saying every time we got involved in a fight, you lost 10 grand or 20, 15 grand fine straight away. So the fight comes, you're like, you got to get up. You're like, there goes 15 grand, get up, and you get involved in the fight. That was a very common thing. Again, in the 70s, 80s, and NBA had this problem for ages. But it's not a rare thing. NFL players get into fights. Fucking hockey seems to be massively about fights. There's even a role on ice hockey teams as the enforcer. You're there to have the fight. For God's sake, that's literally how it works. So that's the first thing to get out open and clear. But the biggest thing in the NBA is there is no separation between the crowd. Players have dived into the crowd before trying to retrieve the ball and taken out fans. Yeah. Like Shaq is renowned for jumping in the crowd, and it got so bad at one point he nearly did it, and the entire bench he was running towards jumped up and just dived off out of the way.
Because they didn't want any smoke. They didn't want any of that.
You don't want a 22, 23 stone. No, it's more than that. Probably 25 stone man jumping at you.
I'd just say over 350 pound guy. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Over 250 pound, not 350. That's heavy. Over 250 pound guy running
but
towards.
I think he got up towards 300s at some stage when he got big.
Yeah, probably when he got big, but not in his playing days.
Nice playing days. So Malice in the Palace. So the way, now again, this was probably 2000 and what?
This happened in 2004.
Right,
so November is 2004.
Okay, the good thing was we had the internet then showing NBA basketball, so you could find clips of it. So all you saw...
clips. You could only see a little bit.
Right, but Indy, I come from, again, a generation before you. We used to get a once a week, half an hour TV show. That was it, on Channel 4, showing us NBA news. That was about being 99, I think. No, before 99, it'd be 97, 98, because it had Bulls and had Mike winning his, against the Supersonics and Jazz.
Yeah.
That's all we ever had, right? So, this would never been covered in those days. So you got to university, I was at university at the time, and like, oh, big NBA fight, yeah, what do you do? Then it's like, oh, a big NBA fight with the fans. Yeah. You're like, oh shit. Because process this, NBA players are not small men.
No.
These are like 6'6", 6'10", beefy mofos. And if they start swinging, there's going to be some damage, man. It's damage, right?
Yeah.
And you get this image of don't get punked. And fans in America are not like, big folk anyway. So I remember watching it and I saw clips.
They're big in that way. They're big.
Well, they're big in like
they're not.
They're dense. They're not like built, right?
Yeah.
But I think what used to happen was all I ever saw clips wise was the players being hauled off and fans just pouring, and I mean just willfully pouring drinks and throwing ice at them, and I was like, That's fucking horrible. And the players get their heads covered by the security guards and just dragged out through off the pitch. I never quite saw what the fight was about. I saw Ben Wallace push and shove a little bit.
So let's give context on the players then here. So here's what happened. The fight centers around 4 NBA players. 3 players from the Indiana Pacers, 1 from the Detroit Pistons. So from the Indiana Pacers, you've got Ron Artest, you've got Stephen Jackson, you've got
Jermaine O'Neal.
Who is it? Jermaine O'Neal. And then from the Pistons, you've got Ben Wallace. These are the 4 guys that were mainly involved that ended up in the end. Spoiler alert, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's not really spoilers, it's just sort of dissecting it. What happened was those 4 got big suspensions as a result of the fight.
Did Ben get one as well?
Yeah, he did.
Did Ben got one too?
They all got it.
Okay, because the fight on the court was between Ben and Ron, right?
Yeah.
Ben Wallace being a beefy, big Afro guy, 6'10" centre.
He was 6'9", 6'9", yeah.
Okay, and
he
Ron
wasn't
Artest
actually
being
that big for a centre, which is quite weird because centres back then were naturally a little bit taller. He was quite small for his size.
But he had that fro.
That big afro,
that Dr. J fro
Gave
thing,
that
right?
illusion that he was bigger, yeah.
But also, Detroit Pistons are renowned for being, even back in the 80s, the Piston Bad Boys, the physical teams.
Yeah.
So that,
in the
that
NBA,
speaks to their fans as well.
In the NBA, you've got different playing styles, which is you can be like nowadays it's all about 3-point shooting. It's all about how many points can you accumulate in the 48 minutes possible. Right. But each team had a different style. So you'd have the Pistons who were really rough. They'd be really brash and try and push against you and try and be really, really gritty. Then you'd have other teams that were like a bit soft. They didn't want to play through the middle. They wanted to settle for jump shots. They wanted to settle for 3-point shots. So back then, the NBA had different teams that had different styles. Nowadays, every team is pretty much the same style because that's how the game is. They all want to shoot the 3-pointer. They all want to do this whole softly approach. There's no real dominant centers anymore. So the game's changed a lot.
Well, so we might go on a bit of a tangent here, but centres themselves have changed a lot as well.
Yeah, they have.
The Euro step centre
nowadays shoot 3-pointers. Back then, a centre would never go outside of the free throw line. It would be really unheard of.
But then people are saying, well, the game's less physical because they want it to be more Showtime. Yeah. Back in the late 90s, or mid-90s, you had the Showtime Lakers, 80s, 90s, Showtime Lakers against the Boston Celtics. That was a big thing, Lakers-Celtics.
That was a big rivalry.
And the Celtics were renowned for being a more physical team. They just were, Kevin McHale. And you know what? Overall, who won more championships? I think it was Boston.
Yeah.
Right? Boston were a far more physical team than LA. Showtime, the fast movement, the passing move, Magic Johnson, all them boys. That's the thing right there. But that versus the physical, grind you down, annoy you, elbow you, get away with stuff. That was the physicality of the East Coast teams.
So what made this a unique matchup was both teams were doing that. They were both gritty teams. They were both elbowing each other, like being really rough, getting those little slide digs in. They were both exactly the same team. Now, the reason why this blew up into such an event, gone.
The idea was they're both the same team, you're right. But the thing you have to look at is that Pistons won the championship by this point.
Yeah, so...
They'd won it being the gritty defensive team.
Yeah, so the precursor was the Pacers faced the Pistons in the 2004 NBA Conference Finals. So they played them in the Eastern Conference Finals. The way the NBA works is you have 16 teams, top 8 in both conferences 32 teams, 16 in 2 conferences. You have the top 8 teams from both conferences. They fight it out. You get the Eastern Conference Finals, the Western Conference Finals. The winner of those 2 represents the East Coast and West Coast. They play, you then get an NBA champion. That's how it goes. Now, these guys were fighting each other in the Eastern Conference Finals, so for the chance to win the NBA championship against the winner from the West Coast. Now, they played, the Pistons won. They beat them in 2004. Yeah. And they beat the Lakers and stopped them from winning their 4th title in a row with Shaq and Kobe Bryant.
Shaq and Kobe, right? So this is like Lakers just built a dynasty. They've gone back to back to back. That's 3 in a row, right? And then this is going to be the 4th one, and that would have been incredible. But then I hated Detroit for beating them. I hate Detroit for that.
Yeah, so the Pistons beat the Pacers, and ultimately they went on to win the championship. So the next season, it was really that feeling of unfinished business. And I think this was the first game they had of playing each other since that loss or since that playoff loss.
Sure.
Now, to go back to the players, it's important to sort of give reference to each player. So in the documentary, you've got the 4 players as mentioned. First one is Jermaine O'Neal. So he was the first guy at the Pacers. He arrived at the Pacers and he was a sort of rookie-ish player. He was renowned for... Sorry, he was... What's the word? Touted to be the next big player in the NBA. He went to the Trailblazers. He didn't do very well because he was on the bench. He went to the Pacers to go be a starter. Now, the one thing I didn't like about the documentary was they positioned him to be like, oh, he was this great player. He had like so much potential. But I was like, that's bullshit. I'm sorry.
He was never that guy.
He didn't do anything great.
He was never that guy.
He was okay. Funny stat, he never completed an 82 season game in his career. The max he got to was 81. And he was always known for being injured. So when he came across my wavelength, he was at Miami after his stint at the Pacers. I'm a Miami Heat fan. And what happened was he came to Miami and he was injured all the time. And I was like, who is this guy? I've never heard of him. Then I found out, oh, he's the guy from the Malice and the Palace. Right, okay, I get it. Cool.
Yeah.
So they painted him out to be this whole like, oh, he's a really
the
good
next
player.
big hype, the next big player in the NBA. I was thinking,
the next big player.
You never had that hype to your name, my friend, ever. I don't know.
He didn't have it.
He got to be an all-star, right? He got to be an all-star, didn't he?
I don't know. I really don't know. He might do. But there is a weird thing about him where he had...
six-time all-star.
Yeah.
He got most improved player in 2002.
Yeah.
Right? And he got NBA second team. So, again, you can't tell me this guy's meant to be that guy if he's that level. Just no.
He had really shit luck, though. Like, if I paint you a timeline, so I've written it down here, the timeline is quite weird. So he joined Miami in 2009, 2010. He leaves at the end of 2010. They get LeBron James in. They go to the finals 4 years in a row. Okay?
Right.
So he leaves Miami and goes to Boston. Boston had just won the title 2 years before. Goes to Boston, gets beat by the Miami Heat and LeBron James. So he gets denied his opportunity to go to the finals. Okay. He then moves around a little bit more to the Phoenix Suns. Then he goes to Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors, he did one season with them in 2013 to 2014. He had wrist surgery, missed the next season. He had opportunities to play, said he didn't want to play.
Right.
And that season, the Golden State Warriors cemented their dynasty of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, and they won their first championship in years. So this guy has really bad luck.
It's not dynasty, Indy. Dynasty is the wrong word. It's franchise. No, dynasty is when you go back to back to back.
They created a dynasty from therein because they won in 2015.
Did they win 3 in a row, did they? A dynasty is 3 in a row.
I'm saying they made it to the finals each year for 4 years in a row.
Okay, but fine. Dynasty of the final, let's stop the winner.
I think it's 3 years in a row they made it to 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row they made it to the finals. They won 2 out of 4.
So hang about. So the first one they went on, he didn't want to play, but he had 3 more opportunities after that, didn't he? Or did he get traded again after that?
What do you mean he didn't want to play?
You said he had a wrist injury, right?
So he had a wrist injury at the end of 2014. 2014 to 2015 season, he had the opportunity to play. He had numerous offers from teams, but he said he was tired. He didn't want to play, and then he retired.
Oh wow, okay. So he quit basketball at that stage.
Yeah,
okay,
so
fine.
He basically stopped.
Yeah.
So he had shit luck. I'll say that from the get go. Unfulfilled potential, let's call it. Yeah.
Luck is a weird phrase. Luck is when opportunity presents hard work. Okay,
but if you've been unlucky with injuries, you've been unlucky with injuries, right?
Well, do you think NBA players are responsible for their injuries at all? If this happens on the court, all well and good. A lot of players is about how you rehab them. And the issue I read Shaq's autobiography. The problem you have is if you take medical advice from the coach and team doctors, they're there for the short term to maximise you as an asset.
Yeah.
If you've got your own doctor, they may advise you for the long term to not do these sort of things or to change up how things work.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one when you tell me, it's unlucky with injuries, because, well, did he take care of himself? Did he do something he should be doing? Did he take the right advice? Did he become hard-headed? Did he become ignorant? Did he become non-rehab? A lot of players do doss around.
He had numerous surgeries.
We had numerous surgeries, fine, but like one of my favourite players, and your favourite player, I think, is Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Do you ever say Kobe's been lucky with injuries?
No, but he played through them. But some of his injuries were able to play through. I think if Kobe had a wrist injury, a bit like how Steph Curry had last season, you get that operated on. You can't really rehab it.
Kobe had to change his entire shooting technique because of his finger smash.
Yeah, he changed his technique for his fingers. I understand.
So he worked.
But,
So like, I'm not saying he didn't have. That's a pretty big injury in itself, right? I've seen him dislocate his finger on quad, but snap back in, and he's like, tape it, let's go. I mean, that's not soft.
I think Jermaine O'Neal had 3 wrist operations off the top of my head.
Okay.
So I'm assuming he must have had some underlying weakness there for years. Maybe he didn't address it.
Okay.
But anyway,
so that's Jermaine O'Neal.
Done. Cool.
Done.
Right, Ron Artest. This guy is unstable, to say the least. He's got a lot of mental health issues. He's diagnosed with anxiety, depression, etc. But can't deny, very good player. He would handle the ball on the perimeter, which means outside the 3-point line. He was very good with ball handles. He was a good defender on the in the paint, which is the inside, just underneath the basketball net, and also on the outside on the 3-point line. So he was very good. But his downside to him was he had a temper. He didn't know how to control himself properly.
Yeah, he blew up big time. Awful. But he was renowned for it, right?
Yeah.
Now, did Ron Artest come from New York?
I don't know where he came from.
If I've got I'm just going to check quickly. I'm going to check. I got a feeling Ron Artest came from New York Knicks, and I think that Knicks team were renowned for being absolute head cases. Just going to quickly look now.
Yeah, so he came from poor beginnings, basically. Very humble. Same with him and Jermaine O'Neal. They were from very poor beginnings. They didn't really have much, but they mastered the game of basketball and they made it to the NBA.
Yeah, so now I've got my dates wrong with him. He ended up at the Knicks. He didn't come from the Knicks. He came from the Bulls. He came from the
Bulls to the Pistons.
Right,
yeah.
Fine.
Sorry,
yeah,
the Pistons, Pacers. Fuck me. Doesn't help when both teams start with a P, does it?
P. Yeah. Papa. So yeah. Okay. That's him. Boom.
Erratic, etc. He has that. Cool.
Yeah.
Any more notes I've got on him?
Stephen Jackson?
I don't. Oh yeah. So you've got him. Fine. Then you've got Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson won an NBA championship at the San Antonio Spurs. Now this is important because when the Pacers lost to the Pistons the previous year, they didn't have enough to get them over the line. So what you're going to do, you're going to get a guy from the San Antonio Spurs who's won a championship, knows how to win it, come into your team, will help you take you forward to that next level. You're like, yeah, perfect, we're good to go.
Yeah.
He also was the same, poor beginnings, etc. Quite well known for being gritty as well. So now you can see that the whole team dynamic is just we're going to
We're
going to be bastards, basically. That's it, man.
Right.
That's all it is. We're going to do the real dirty shit that no one wants to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they had Reggie Miller as well. Let's not forget Reggie Miller.
Reggie Miller as well. Yeah. But he was in his last year of his career.
Sure, but he's still a shooter. He's still your Mr.
He was still a shooter. Yeah, he was a superstar. Yeah.
Okay. And then finally Ben Wallace.
Yeah, so Ben Wallace is the guy from the Pistons who was in the fight. He was just a big centre. He wasn't really a great player. Very good defensively, wasn't a great player. But in the run-up to the fight, his sister or something had passed away. If I'm not mistaken, or a family member had passed away. So his headspace wasn't great.
Okay. So
cool.
That's the play.
So that's all everyone's history, yeah?
Right.
All right, so the fight itself when it kicks off. So imagine you're the Pistons. You're welcoming in the Pacers who you've beat, so you want to rub it in their face that you've won everything. You see players coming into the arena with their championship ring on, which players don't fucking do normally, by the way. Once you've won the ring, you leave it at home. You don't go rocking up to a game showing it to people. No. So that's obviously going to cause some angst. And
sorry, that was the Pistons doing that to the Pacers.
The Pistons were doing that in the pre-game, to the camera and shit. So obviously that's going to get around. They're going to be like, all right, you're flouting it. I get it.
Yeah, right.
So the Pacers played really well. They pretty much battered them all game.
They smashed the shit out of them.
They were really good. Ron Artest was on fire. He was playing fantastically well. He was unguardable.
Yeah. Reggie wasn't playing. Reggie Miller wasn't playing that game.
Yeah, he was injured. He was
in a suit playing to one side on the sidelines.
He had some kind of arm operation or whatever.
Right.
So he was out. Now, the game's in the last 4 or 5 minutes, and the Pacers are up by about 15. Now, they're still going for it. They're still going after the Pistons, right? And one of the guys on the Pacers says to Ron Artest, "You still got a foul."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What does that mean?" And he's basically encouraging Ron, "Yo, fuck that guy up. Get one on him. Leave a mark on him."
Bit of pretext here. In the NBA, you're allowed 6 fouls. After six foul, you foul out the game. You sent off basically.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of players have got if you've got 5 fouls. then the point is, if you commit a sixth one, you get kicked out. So you play soft, and you get weak, and people will target you for that.
Yeah.
If they know you're hot-headed, they may try and pressure you to cause you to try and foul out and consider how to defend early. Ron had obviously controlled himself so well, they had a foul to give, really.
Yeah.
And someone said to him, yo, you got one still. And also the team aren't in penalty as well, it's the other factor. So if a team fouls too much, I don't know I can't remember the numbers of basketball, but if you do commit too many fouls, every foul you do after that.
If you commit too many fouls in a quarter, I think it's 4.
If you then they get free throws.
Fouls in a quarter, they get free throws regardless of what happens. Normally, you only get free throws if you're fouled in the act of shooting.
Yeah.
But if you're past 4, no matter where you foul them on the court, it goes straight to the free throw line.
Right. So paces are obviously within that with both the player and the team. You got a foul to give.
So he chose to foul Ben Wallace on an easy dunk. He pushed him hard, right?
Yeah.
Now, Ben's obviously not in the best mind state, right, because of everything that happened with his family. So he goes after Ron. They start pushing and shoving, etc. And you think, oh, something's going to pop off. Normally, things don't when it comes to stuff like that. It's just like pushing and shoving, etc.
But hang about. Just rewind here. Let's think of the physicality, right? You're a basketballer. You weigh, wherever Ben Wallace weighs. Ben Wallace weighs 220, right?
Yeah.
You're going to jump 10 feet in the air. Well, I think I forgot to say. You're going to jump 10 feet into the air and dunk a ball. And then land on your feet.
Yeah.
If you get pushed in midair, you're going to take off, and suddenly you're a 220-pound slab of meat that's going to land badly. Now, just think the damage that can do is quite bad. Some players do get hurt on the way down. Twisted ankles are normally the minimum.
Yeah, but
right?
broken arms as well when you try and stop a fall.
Tom Segura.
Yeah.
Right. So these are things that can happen. So for Ben Wallace to get pissed off, I personally think. Yeah, I'd agree with you because
I get it.
These fouls are a hard foul. Hard foul me on the way up. Don't hard foul me while I'm in the air because you're disrupting my way of landing, which is my health and my career.
Yeah.
So he was pissed and he went straight up, got up and thought straight after him.
So they were about to fight and the refs held it up. Ben Wallace gets ejected for his reaction because he tried to fight Ron.
Yeah.
Starts throwing shit at Ron. Ron's like, let me just take myself out of the situation. And this is where Ron fucked up, right? He lies down on the scorer's table. Now, in the NBA... No one does that. In the NBA, there's a thing called the scorer's table, which is where, when you're subbed in football, you have like a board and they sub you in. That's where players go to be subbed into the basketball game. You normally just sit there and wait. You crouch down so you don't block the commentator's view. And you wait to be subbed in. He lies down across the top of it. No one fucking does that.
Like hands behind his head.
Hands behind his head like he's on a fucking beach.
I'm good, thank you. But at this point, everyone else is fighting, pushing, shoving, holding each other back.
He's there chilling.
I caused all that shit and I'm going to sit right here and chill.
Now bear in mind, there's only the fans left behind of the real die-hard Pistons fans.
Yeah, the game's over. The game's done.
The game's done.
Go home.
When you're down 15, you've got 3 minutes to go, and you've seen it stay at that level. You know your team's not going to come back, so you leave to go home early, innit? Now, the fans that stayed there and were still available, they were the ones who were like either drunk out their fucking mind, ready to abuse the players, whatever you want to do. One of them throws a bottle at Ron Artest, a bottle of water. And it's a perfect throw. I got to give it to him. It's a fucking perfect throw, right? He judged that distance like he must have been practicing in his spare time or some shit, right? He threw it, hits Ron on the chest. Ron sees where it comes from, runs up to the fan, so jumps into the audience, crawls through a bunch of fans, and starts wailing on some guy, beating the shit out of him.
Two things. One, Americans are good at that for one reason. They've got a game they play called cornholing.
Right.
Have you heard of that?
No.
Okay, it's a pastime American game, right? So, American listening, you can sort of back me up here. And if you don't back me up, screw you. It's a game. I've seen you guys play it. You get a board at an angle like this. You get a hole at the top. You stand about 10 feet away, and you get a little hacky sack, like a beanbag sack, and you chuck it into it. And you got to time it just perfect to land into the cornhole.
Okay,
it's called cornholing. So, in my professional opinion on Americans, I've got a feeling he was very good at that, hence why he judged it just right with the dip and the takeoff and the splat. But
now,
Ron...
that doesn't mean that I agree that the fans should have thrown that shit at Ron.
No.
I think Ron did provoke it, but I don't agree with you throwing shit at a player. Now, he jumped in the crowd, he starts wailing on some guy. He actually starts wailing on the wrong guy, because the guy who he was meant to hit was the guy next to him.
Right.
who watch this poor guy next to him get the shit kicked out of him, and then tries to hold Ron back. And I'm
An
like,
angry black
"You're the guy
man
who
runs
just fucking
over.
threw
He's
it
like,
at him."
not me, not me.
Yeah,
Whap.
it's mad. So that happens. Then a bunch of the players start jumping in. You've got Ben Wallace who jumps in and starts fighting fans. You've got Jermaine O'Neal that jumps in. You've got
Stephen
Jackson that jumps in. Hence why those four are the main ones in this story.
But when you say
They
fighting
jump
fans, it's not just fighting fans. So that happens with Ron. And as Ron's there, they try and get Ron back out of the crowd. Other fans start running in and trying to land licks on Ron Artest here.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, he's going... No, they're trying to... They can defend themselves. No. They're running from all over to try and
Just
get
try and
licks
get
on
something
him.
in.
And you're like,
Now,
what the
Stephen
fuck?
Jackson said, "I went in to go and protect my boy." But he
Yeah.
said, but one of them tried to hit him. He said, "Well, fuck it, I went for him."
Yeah.
Right? I went for that fan, and he knocks out another fan. I'm
Yeah.
like, fucking hell, it's
Clark's
going
is
down for
in.
real.
The best one, though, was the Jermaine O'Neal one.
Hang on. So I'm going to come to that, yeah?
Yeah.
So they pull Ron out the crowd. He's back
Yep.
into the court. Bear in mind, the police aren't anywhere. They've disappeared for some reason. All the security had gone. Considering it was a high-tension game, they'd sort of just eased off, I think, because they knew it was a blowout. They didn't think anything was going to happen.
But Indy, how many stewards are there? Let's be
I
real.
don't know. Now,
They only interviewed 2 in the documentary itself.
they interviewed
They couldn't get the
two police
rest.
officers who, by the way,
Off-duty
didn't
police
put
officers.
themselves in the best light.
No.
They put themselves in the worst light possible. I'll come to that as well in a sec. So
Yeah.
what happened? Ron comes back onto the court. He's there, and then normally the court's your like haven. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's where you're like, oh, I'm secure, I'm
Sacrosanct.
cool here.
Yeah.
There's a fucking Pistons fan who's there in front of him, who walks up to Ron, fist clenched, and he's looking at
Weighing
him.
up.
And Ron's like, well, I'm gonna knock him out then. So he decks him one clean, knocks him, and he's like, whoa,
Yeah.
shit, okay. The fight starts kicking off there. Jermaine O'Neal sees this, runs across the court, and tries to clap the guy clean in the face.
With a wicked punch.
But he slipped. It
He
was a
still
fucking
lands the
good
punch,
thing
though.
slipped.
He still lands the punch. He still lands on the
but he
guy.
slipped.
Yeah.
Now, Reggie Miller says, I'm glad Jermaine slipped, because otherwise he would have killed him if he connected. And I'm pretty sure he would have, because
I don't
the
know,
guy
I
was
mean-
small and stocky.
Killing's hard. You might knock him out. It's how they fall that really kills them.
He
right?
was small and stocky, man. That guy was going to get what's coming to
The
him.
funny bit was that guy was a fan, and the coppers you were on about said, I'm not even the coppers, some of these head stewards were like, we were going to revoke his ticket based on his behaviour at previous
That's the
match,
one,
previous
but they
games.
didn't do it yet.
We didn't, none did it yet. He was drunk this time. We thought
Yeah.
after this game we're going to kick him out and say, look, you're done.
Yeah.
He turns round, he reminds me of, do you remember Eric Cantona when he cry kicked that guy in the crowd?
Yeah.
That guy said, I've been attacked, I had studs in my chest, and all this sort of stuff. And he's saying, I've been abused, I'm a victim, I'm this, I'm that. This guy took the exact same victim mentality of, I was abused, they mistreated me, I'm a fan.
Exactly.
All that bullshit. Right?
Why
And
the
you
fuck
go,
were you there?
I'm a loyal fan, I'm entitled to be here.
Loyal
You don't
fan,
do
my
shit,
ass, man. You deserve what was coming to you in that instance.
Right.
So
But-
all that shit's kicking off. More security jump in. Now the police are there, right?
Yeah.
Now, Reggie Miller has pulling back one of the players. He's pulling back Ron Artest. The police officer that's being interviewed said, I wasn't trying to mace Ron Artest. Macing is where you basically have pepper spray and you spray them in the face. Yeah?
Yep.
You watch the footage. This police officer's running up to Ron and he's got the spray in his
Yeah.
fucking hand. He's about to go for him. And Reggie Miller's like, stop. What the fuck are you doing? Protect us. We're the players. Stop the fans from fighting us. The police officer says, who are you?
Who the fuck are you?
I'm like, are you taking the piss? This is the franchise face of the Indiana Pacers for 18 years, and you
Yeah.
don't know who the fuck he is. For equivalency, that's like going to a Barcelona game and being like, who's Messi?
Yeah.
To the Indiana Pacers, he is their like number one player they've ever
I
had.
think the copper would argue you're a black guy in a suit. I don't recognise you.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, that's bullshit, man. You recognise him. You know who he is.
But funny you mentioned that one because the equivalent I drew from that was actually even up to recently when the Raptors won the NBA championships. Their owner, who had a security
Yeah, I
pass,
remember that. Yeah,
tried
yeah.
to come onto the court to celebrate, and a copper shoved him back twice and says, "Get the fuck out of here." He goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm the owner of the freaking franchise. I've got my security pass. I'm in a suit. I'm going onto the court." The
Yeah.
copper pushed him back again. And I mean pushed him hard, shoved him.
Yeah, I remember that.
The owner pushed back with his arm, like, "What the fuck are you doing? Get off me." And they got separated. Okay, the owner was pissed off, and the players actually dragged the owner on, getting past the copper.
Yeah.
The police officer in question then put in a claim for compensation, claiming he was hurt due to repeated strikes to his chest and jaw.
Fuck off, man. Little bitch.
Right? And he goes, I didn't recognise the NBA owner. Owner says, don't recognise me, that's fine. I've got a pass on, I've got the lanyard, I'm wearing it cleanly, I am walking towards the call, and other guys are walking past him to celebrate, but I'm the only black guy in a suit, and I get stopped, and I get pushed, and I get shoved.
Absolute bollocks, man. So,
and that's how many years later?
And that happened 3 years ago?
4 years ago, right? So you can see that not much has changed in the NBA in about 14 years.
No, nothing at all.
No.
So the objective now is to get the players back to the locker room safe. They get Ron Artest off the floor. They get Steven Jackson off the floor. Last guy off the floor is Jermaine O'Neal. He gets all the fucking smoke. He gets everything thrown at him, right? And the reason why is because there's one exit out of the court. So all the fans started congregating towards the exit to start either causing a riot,
abusing or throwing,
to abuse him, throw shit, etc. He was having drinks thrown at him, everything. One thing that was thrown was a chair. And this brought back a reference to me and Bal, which is, Bal, do you remember the Boondocks?
Boondocks, yeah.
There's this cartoon that me and Bal watch. It's quite an adult cartoon called Boondocks. And
Aaron McGruger,
one of the phrases is,
writer.
let me throw a chair, because anytime you throw a chair, a riot starts. And I was like, this must be where they got that reference from.
Yeah.
It must be.
Even if the chair hits no one, as long as you throw a chair, there will be a riot.
There will be a fucking riot. So someone threw a chair, etc. Jermaine O'Neal had everything thrown at him, and he was losing his shit. He got to the locker room, gets in the locker room, and then Ron Artest says to him, are we going to get in trouble? And I'm like, motherfucker, I've just gone out there, I've got licks from you, I've got licks on your behalf, I've got battered, I've tried to fight your corner, I had the end abuse, and you're asking me if we're going to be in trouble. So they had a scuffle in the changing room as well.
And he's dripping in like coke and drinks and spit. Fans are spitting on players, right?
They'll happily spit on you.
Yeah.
Now, the precursor to that is those two had tension throughout the season already. They had friction because Ron Artest wasn't committed to the Pacers throughout the year. He was having, time off. He said somebody passed away in his family, but then 3 days later he was on stage at a hip hop awards called the Source Awards presenting an award. And Jermaine O'Neal's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're clearly not committed to this cause. Mm-hmm. So I get that, because that's kind of like what Kobe and Shaq had when they were together. One was really committed, and one was sort of in and out.
But to be honest, it felt more, not like Kobe Shaq, it felt more like Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, it kind of did.
Rodman, like,
erratic.
I'm erratic, but I need to blow off steam in a really, really weird kind of way. Yeah. And my way, I'm meant to be mourning my grandma's death, is to go to the Source Awards and party with these guys.
Which is stupid. He even admits it himself in the documentary. It's stupid.
Well, no, I mean, fast forward a little bit here. The most telling part for me about his character was when he won the NBA championship a couple of years later, or a year later, with the Lakers.
No, he won it by 5 years later, 5 6 years.
5 years later, the Power of the Soul, Kobe Bryant,
he won at the Lakers.
Yeah, and his first interview, one of his very interviews, he says, "I feel really bad and guilty based on I should have won this with Pacers."
Yeah,
and you're like, "Oh, well, you just won." Like, you should be thinking about that. That's one of his very first interviews he has. He's sweating on the call, sat down, headset on.
Game 7 really as well, guilty. FYI. Game 7, which is a sudden death game, which means winner takes all.
Yeah. And he said, I still feel guilty.
He also hit the game-winning shot as well.
Oh, did he? I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
bit.
So it was a very tight game. He scored that last shot just to get them separation.
Oh, he had that thing where, in the interview afterwards, he's there going, I got the ball, and Phil's looking at me because Phil's their master, and Phil's saying, pass the ball.
And he shot it.
Psych, I got this, Phil. YOLO.
He shot it and he drained it, and it was a bad shot to take, but he drained it, so he got lucky.
Yeah.
Now, but again, it shows how much of an erratic player he is.
Yes.
He does shit like that. This is the same guy who dunked on someone, beat his chest with his arm, and then elbowed the guy afterwards as he was beating his chest, and the ref's like ejected. He's like, why are you beating my chest? We're like, mate, you elbowed someone. I'm not fucking stupid, right? He's that kind of guy.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. So I mean, so this all kicks off, and then the NBA. Now, the trouble with the NBA has always been it's run by one person,
David Stern,
Commissioner Stern, right? And he's regularly in the past hated and clashed with players, what they do, how they behave, what they wear. There's a renowned NBA shoe for the not NBA shoe, sorry. There's a renowned colorway for the Jordans called Band. So the Jordan band is the red and black bread Jordans. David Stern banned him from wearing that colour combination because it wasn't in line with everyone else's trainers. So he had to keep paying fines, which Nike paid every time he played in them. Right?
Yeah.
He's that strict on every little bit minutiae detail.
This is the same guy who vetoed trades. He vetoed Chris Paul, who was another good NBA player, from joining the LA Lakers and joining Kobe Bryant.
Why?
And Pau Gasol. Because
Why?
he can.
Right. Again, I don't get it at all, right? And now what Indy may not remember is that about 3 or 4 years previous to this actual game, there was an issue where the NBA had a lockout, where the players went on strike.
So what's a lockout season? Explain to people.
A lockout season when all the players go on strike. They're not going to go to the stadium's locked. They're not going to walk in. They're not going to play at all over problems with salary.
Yeah.
And dealing with salary caps and payment and everything else. Because some guys
this
don't
is
get paid
negotiated
at all.
normally. Back then it was negotiated every X amount of years. I think it was 10. But I could be
Right.
wrong.
It came up again and there was no negotiation agreed. So all the players sat out of it. Now this is after Mike had won his last championship, I believe. So it would have been 99. 1999. And the point is, for Howard Stern, for David Stern, this is a source of great embarrassment because you're in charge of the NBA. There is right now no product at all, and you're the commissioner. You're the guy that they're negotiating with. He had to give up some power in that renegotiation, and they finally came back and had a shortened season that season, which I think the Spurs
about 50
won.
games or something.
Yeah, 50 games. The Spurs won that season, right?
Yeah.
And so Stern's always had an issue where he'd lost power in that negotiation anyway. And people would say he's been more and more punitive since then towards players for any sort of indiscretion.
Punitive as in lenient.
No, punitive means harsher.
Right, okay. So
So
he's been bitter because he had to see
Bitter
ground.
and embittered because he had to concede ground on that, and also the players had power. And he doesn't like the way players had power over in that regard. They essentially unionised against him. So
what he did after that was he created the dress code. And
well,
he said...
he did a number of things. In response to this fight and everything else, it wasn't just a dress code out of nowhere. It was a case of every political commentator, normally Fox News, normally right-wing, called these people spoiled, entitled arseholes, called them brats, said that they don't know how to behave.
Yeah.
Call it the National Thug League, right?
Yeah.
It's just black, right? We don't like these billionaire crybabies.
So many racial undertones, and it's
Right.
mad.
Yeah. Don't know how to behave is the most poignant line because they use it all the time. They don't know how to act. They don't know how to act.
How the fuck would you react if somebody threw a bottle at you in the street? You'd go for them. What gives you the right on doing that to somebody on a court? Just because you're in a fucking stadium doesn't mean that you have right to do that. If you're walking past that guy in the street and you throw something at him, something's going down. Like, I'm sorry, it is.
Well, that's false equivalency, and I'll tell you why. Right? If you walk down the street and you say to someone, fuck off, you black whatever, yeah? You could be arrested, correct? I go to a football game. Yeah, racial abuse.
Yeah.
I go to a football game, I chat that verbatim for 90 minutes if it happens to me at all.
Yeah.
The rules change. And I don't agree with this, but let's talk it out. The rules change when you go to sport events.
But I'm saying you deserve your comeuppance, right?
The comeuppance is fine, but the point is you can't. You're trying to say in the real world I should be able to be done to do X, Y, and Z.
No, I'm saying in the real world you hold the same standards you get on the court. You throw something at someone on the street, yeah, and they end up fighting you. That's your comeuppance. What's stopping people from getting that in a game? It's simply because you're in a game and they're like, oh, you can't fight with the fans.
Well, the common argument used is you're a professional. Deal with it.
Fucking hell.
But those same arguments are used now against football players in the Premier League, right?
Yeah,
you're a professional. You're racist, right? Exactly. So it's not a case. It's a sudden new phenomenon. It translates across very well. Players take the knee. Players get booed. Players get monkey chanted and things like that. You're a professional. Deal with it. You're a professional. You should handle it. It's all part of the game, right? It's most commonly the excuse, and it's an excuse that is used. And until you dig into the levels of, well, that's just not acceptable. I'm sorry, right? So you dig into that and say, well, unless you stop it from there, how can you? At a football game, you've got 50,000 people chanting and swearing. I don't care how many stewards you have, you can't find the ball. There is CCTV, there's filming as well. And what happened in this regard was they had so many cameras around the court. They could
see wags.
They could see what one, see who's doing what, and see who was starting what, throwing what, who'd moved from what, where, and when. That was the only thing that actually helped some of the players. But the point was that investigation was done by the police over a number of hours.
Yeah,
and
so hang on. So we're skipping ahead here, which is...
sorry.
David Stern comes out and says, right, Ron Artest, suspended for the rest of the season. Stephen Jackson, you're suspended for X games. Same for Jermaine O'Neal, you're suspended for X amount of games. Same for Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace
got less. He got the least. He got the least.
But he got some suspension. Now, that costs players money, innit? Like, of course. If you get suspended in that way, you're unpaid. So all this cracks off. Then he starts introducing this dress code, saying all players must dress in suits when you come to games. You can't dress in whatever you want, which is kind of a shame because back then in the 2000s, hip-hop attire was kind of popping.
No hip-hop wear.
Yeah, but hip-hop attire was kind of popping. You had rocker wear, you had bufu, you had everything. And all the players were repping it. So
you had what, sorry? You had what?
Sorry, FUBU. You know why I said that? Because of how high. That's why. Holy shit, man.
Okay. You've got to explain that. Okay, so FUBU was a band by Damon John called FUBU, right? For us, by us. And in a film called How High, there's a Chinese guy who wears boo-foo because he's not black. And he goes, boo-foo, what does that mean? That means by us, fuck you!
Oh, that's such a reflex. That comes out of me because I've seen that film so many times. Anyway, you had those fashion brands out there that were losing, like, potentially eyes on all their attire now.
Of course.
So everyone's dressing up in suits, and that sort of was a way of kind of blending players in to be more
smart and professional.
And David Stern was never gonna have a go at the fans for what they did. Instead, it had to take for criminal proceedings, like how you said, to then analyse everything and make sure it was done correctly through a criminal investigation.
Yeah.
Outcome of the criminal investigation was they prosecuted a bunch of people. They actually located the bottle thrower. This is the wildest bit of the whole documentary.
Yeah.
The bottle thrower was identified by the state prosecutor because he dated his neighbour.
Right.
So he dated the state prosecutor's neighbour. That's how he recognised him.
And the guy admitted to it as well because I threw it.
Yeah, so this guy gets fucking airtime afterwards. He comes on the news and he gets the ability to talk to everyone about what he did. He's like, yeah, I loved it. I did it. And they said, would you change anything? He said, yeah, I would have tripped Ron Artest on the way to beating up that guy. I'm like, you're a piece of shit. Like, honestly, you're a straight piece of shit. During this time, the players can't say shit because they've been told you can't say anything.
Gagging order,
Yeah, you have to say fuck all. Which is bollocks. This guy can go on the air and say whatever the fuck he wants, but the players have to sit there and say nothing because they've been suspended.
Mm-hmm. And also, as part of the terms of suspension, if you want to come back and not get further suspended, you shut the fuck up and stay at home.
It's bollocks. Absolute bollocks, man. Which is why now there's such a push in the NBA to have social media and explain your narrative. So Stephen Jackson, one of the guys who was messed up in this, he's a big proponent of players having social media telling their story. He runs his own podcast called All the Smoke. And he has players on and he says it's really important for you guys to say your message and tell people because look what happened to me with the Malice at the Palace. I didn't get a chance to, but you guys have a voice now. Fucking use it. Like, use it properly.
Right. So, in essence, he's learned responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, insane documentary. It's only an hour and a bit long.
It's an hour and a bit long, man. It's fucking fantastic.
It covers a lot. But, I mean, again,
so
definitely worth watching. If you haven't seen it, guys, do watch it. But it doesn't go too hard, but there is quite obvious racial undertones and overtones from the whole thing.
The only thing I didn't like was there was no coverage in the media of any of the prosecutions that happened. So the guy who was on court that tried to punch Ron Artest, he got sentenced for a little bit.
He was trying to claim compensation. Sorry, he was trying to claim compensation. He was recorded and caught by the security guard saying, "Yo, man, if I get a bit of swelling here, I can then claim compensation." And he could take it out on a stretcher in the end because he got hurt so much and found the floor.
Taking the piss, man.
Yeah.
So all that stuff came out and the players won, and even the prosecutor himself said the players are completely fair to act.
Exonerated. Yeah.
It was all understandable. Ron Artest punching that guy was in self-defense. He shouldn't be prosecuted. He shouldn't be suspended. But none of that went back to David Stern. He didn't give a shit.
But you can't because in a court of law there is no court. In a court of criminal law there is no crime here that's occurred in their opinion. I'm not going to prosecute it. There's no grounds for it. It's done. The NBA is not the court of criminal law. The NBA is run by David Stern. David Stern says, I'm going to do this. And they asked him, was it a majority decision? He goes, yes, it was a majority decision. A majority of one. Me. I'm the one in charge. I decide it. That's what I'm going to do.
I've got to say, though, the coach has to hold some fucking smoke, man. Because why leave your best players on the court that late into a game? that point into a game, it's called garbage time. You sub off your best players, you leave them on the bench, you let your other players get a run out.
Having said that, I'll give you the counter argument. You don't do that at all because you're taking on the current Eastern Conference champions. You beat them with your team and you drive a message. So next time you play, they think, "Damn, these guys roasted us at our ground." No. You drive it. You don't even catch it up. You got to make sure you go all the way. Look, we're here. We're going to outwork you to the final whistle, and so you know you can never beat us. It's a psychological part.
To go, I don't know, man. If you're a coach, you know it's a hostile arena. You do some shit like that to make sure nothing goes wrong. Especially if you got a player that's a fucking hothead on your team.
Sure. But
you're self-aware enough to know that shit about your players.
You're never going to know you're going to start a mini riot off, are you? Let's be honest.
But you know that sometimes your players are prone to doing dumb shit, and you know that it's a hostile environment, and you know that atmosphere. Leave it.
But fights happen. Pushing, shoving. That's all kind of okay in that regard. That's kind of what the teams are known for. So let it go. Let it go. He couldn't have known it was going to start and be what it was.
No one was going to know that. But the coach could have taken some steps. Like even in the NBA now, when a game's pretty much done, you're down 15, 3 minutes to go, you sub your players off. You're like, just keep it going. No one's going to go too hard. It's fine. It's like a weird energy
rule.
Players get. It's like an unwritten rule, which is last few minutes of the game, you're all playing your reserves. It's done now. And also don't showboat. Don't showboat. Don't take the piss. Be civilized. Don't dunk. Don't do anything rude, basically.
Well, you see, it's funny you mentioned that because my immediate thoughts is back into football when Arsenal got smashed, I think 8-1, 8-2 by Man United at the United
Old
ground.
Trafford.
Old Trafford. And one dickhead of a United player, I'm an Arsenal fan by the way, was Nani, who decided while you were 8-2 up to get the ball, flick it up, bounce on his head, bounce around a few times, just sort of play around with it. Like showboating.
Was that game?
That was that game. Arsenal player ran over, just barged into the floor. And he's like, what are you doing? They go, you don't fucking do that. Yes, you battered the fuck out of us. But don't take the piss.
Don't take the piss in it,
That's what, just don't take the piss, right? So, it's not just NBA, it's all sports. If you are whooping someone like that, unless it's fighting. I think fighting's the only one I can think of where it's different, where you legit have to carry on whooping them until the ref calls it off.
Yeah.
You don't.
Last couple of comments I've got on this, then we can wrap it up.
Go.
So, I do think the Pacers would have made it to the NBA Finals if their players weren't suspended, because they had the Pistons number, they could have beat them, and then they would have gone on to play the San Antonio Spurs, who Steven Jackson played for, which means you would have had an edge compared to, say, the Pistons who went on to play them. So there would have been a greater possibility of them to win a championship.
That was Reggie's best chance, and Reggie never got it.
That was his best chance, yeah. So that was a shame, so I get it. And I do see why the documentary took so long to make. So I looked this up. September 29, 2018, Steven Jackson came out saying there was a documentary being made. It took them nearly over 3 years to get this done and released.
Not surprised. I'm going to take the balls to get their their last documentary that came out.
But that's different. That was 10 seasons.
Last Dance.
That was 10 seasons.
Yeah.
This is one event.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, it does take a while. You're right. It takes a while. That's right.
So this one took a while, but I can see why, because they had so many people's perspectives. Like, it was very in depth.
Yeah, for an hour 10 minutes.